No i jest z nami kontynuacja tej nadziei dzisiaj. Na rozmowę o tym zapraszam naszą gościnię, panią dyrektor Marię Weronikę Tovšak Pleterski, a rozmowę przeprowadzi współzałożyciel ELMC, wiceprezes, szef Komitetu Organizacyjnego Kongresu dr Marek Benio. Zapraszam państwa.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the 9th European Labour Mobility Congress. My name is Marek Benio, and I'm very pleased to welcome today Mary Veronica Tovšak Pleterski, the Deputy Director in DG GROW with the European Commission, who is responsible for simplification. That's quite a burden on you, to simplify the rules. Now, you've heard some detailed data, and you've heard a very strong criticism against the new barriers that are arising in the time when almost everybody is speaking about barriers down. How do we go about it? Is this something that we declare is different from what we do? That's the first question.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here with you today. I see that the energy in the room is the right one, and a lot of engagement for taking Europe forward. Let me start maybe to take to put us in the context. First of all, I think a year ago, when I was part of your discussions in Krakow, we all said the urgency is there, we need to do something about competitiveness. Now this year, that time seems really long ago, because the situation in the international and global stage has drastically changed again. What has not changed is the call to have competitive and united Europe. I say united Europe, and that I think was also said through the introductory remarks of Mr. Schwarz, because Europe, looking at the global world of today, is the entity that needs to deliver together for citizens and businesses. Now, of course, we need to deliver prosperity and need to have better life for our citizens and our companies to prosper. And for that, we need to be competitive. I think that is certainly, a challenge which is maybe even more pronounced than what we have seen last year, when now we see that geopolitics is also creating a lot of uncertainty. And it is only that if we together advance, change, adapt, and invent how to work together better. So you have focused our discussions of today on services, and I think for the right reasons. Of course, we know the high percentages of services economy of today, but we also know that in services, Europe has still a lot of potential to deliver better in terms of delivering better business environment, in terms of delivering better opportunities for our citizens. And this is certainly a sector which is not out of our radar screen from the European Commission point of view. Now, it is not a good news either that we recently published our annual Single Market and Competitiveness Report, and we see that the percentage of free circulation of services in terms of GDP has not changed much from the previous year to this year, and even stronger call, because what we see also in the statistics is that the GDP percentage in terms of service circulation between member states is around 8%, and that would be more or less the same what EU would also exchange in terms of services with the third countries. So I think really I joined the call to have better use of this potential. Now you ask me, what do you do? How we go about it? The first thing is that, I can report that we have at least now, I would say, sharpened our analysis. Last year in May, we have issued, you would tell me, yet another strategy, single market strategy, but each time also with a very, I would say, practical approach. What we did in that strategy is that we set up this approach focused around 10 barriers, which we observed in the internal market, not us, doing endless analysis in Brussels, but through what we have heard from you, through public consultation, conferences like this, because last year in Krakow, the objective of the conference was to feed in our process of the strategy. So we came up with these 10 most, reported, I would say, obstacles in single market. You can have a list, but one of them is also administrative burden that companies are facing when operating in the single market. And more specifically, also administrative burden, heavy administrative procedures that are faced by businesses that want to provide services cross-border and send also temporarily, I say, workers to deliver that business. So with this overview of barriers, now we have gone one step further and we developed an overview of concrete obstacles with concrete also definition of an obstacle and what we want to do, how we want to measure the progress. Just to give you one example, we started with services, and their over-regulation is one of the obstacles which is very prominently observed. So we are now setting up work streams very concretely with member states in so-called single market enforcement task force, where we are looking at concrete issues. Take, for example, business services. In 2021, so 5 years ago, we issued recommendations to member states what needs to be done. So what we are looking today is, please tell me what you have done. And if now we are going to analyze this, they reported back to us, and we are going to have discussions with each individual member state, what they have done. Because what I'm saying, very often these barriers are not necessarily a breach of the EU law. These are rather barriers which are generated national, regional level, and when you come to confront with these barriers as an operator, you have really a lot of complexity, to say the least. So we want to now go barrier by barrier. And to give you another example, posting of workers, there in the last 2 years, we again, in this forum, Single Market Enforcement Task Force Forum, this is the forum where Commission sits with 27 member states, and we identify an issue which is brought to our attention from businesses, like in this case, over-complex rules for posting of workers. So what we did analysis, what are then good practices? We asked businesses, please tell us what are, from your point of view, best practices, or at least good practices, that you face and you would like us to have more of them, amplify them in the single market. So we came up with a list of 8 best practices in this area, in the area to reduce barriers for posting workers. And now we have a list where member states comply, and member states agree to that, by the way, because these are already implementing practices in one or another or several member states. And then we made an overview for each country, which barrier you in country X are implementing, and secondly, are you willing to implement it? So we have now, so to say, what to do. We also now more or less know how to do it because you helped us. Where are we stuck? We are stuck with the progress which needs to trigger changes in national legislation. So now, Polish presidency last year organize ministerial discussion, because these are obstacles that very often come in place for political reasons, for national reasons. So we had discussions with senior officials, but it turned out that the senior officials would not have enough leverage to change this type of national decrees, sometimes law, sometimes just administrative practices. So with the help of Polish presidency, I still would like to thank Polish presidency for that, we had ministerial discussion, because these are issues where you would need to write new law, where you would need to amend the law, where you would need to stop doing certain things. And we had a discussion among them. I must say, we are still waiting for the strong push, but the good news is that now this push is coming, I think also from the political level, because what we see is really that Europe needs to advance together. We need to have one market. That was one of the takeaways of the informal council in Belgium not even a month ago. So this is the urgency, and we are going to now work with political level to push through this what agenda, even we know how, but we need political push to get it through in the right levels, most often in member states.
Thank you very much. We will be talking about good practices and also about abolishing barriers which are just administrative barriers. But this morning, I think we've heard something more dangerous, the barriers that actually break the treaties. And they are new barriers on the table, on the way for the services to get to the recipients of those services. Now, we also are facing very deep demographic problems. I wouldn't call them problems because they might be also opportunities, but apparently our economies in Europe need more workforce, and the question is there going to be also a simplification, a political will to simplify and perhaps a little bit harmonize access of third country nationals to the European labor market? What is their role, how the Commission is perceiving the access of third country nationals to the labor markets?
Well, these are very important questions, and very often also, I would say, sensitive questions. We have heard also in the presentation at this introductory section how much these aspects are also reflected in visa policy, for example. This is, of course, the sovereign policy of member states, but the reality indeed is that Europe is aging and that demography is also exposing us to the realities, and the skills shortages are one of the important challenges reported to us from entrepreneurs, I should say, across Europe. I haven't seen member state who would not have a problem for one or two or certain particular professions. Some of them were named this morning, but of course this is not entire list. We also know there are technical professions such as IT engineers, architects. We can continue with the list. So indeed, it is important that Europe opens up this potential in terms of service delivery and also enables European companies to scale. Because what is the promise, I should say, of the single market? The promise, among other things, is you as an entrepreneur, you have scale to operate in this market. Of course, the reality also is that we have still sometimes patchwork of how member states regulate that, and that unnecessarily sometimes, very often, leads to fragmented markets. And that's what I hear as a director for single market enforcement very often. So now I said, I am also director of single market enforcement. Now, also in the area that you mentioned, we already have legal framework. I think we should not pretend that this is only the treaty. There is the treaty, there are directives, but there's also court jurisprudence. So this is certainly, from our point of view, from my point of view at least, a very strong framework which offers us, clarity and predictability. We need to implement it. Now, from the point of view of third country nationals, that is also, an area where we also have valid rules. We have, for the workers would need to be integrated in the market of country that is posting the worker somewhere. Now, if you look here, maybe you have more flexible interpretation for that. If I tell you also what I hear from other countries, some member states are asking us, please regulate. I want to be very have clear in law, and they are asking for a new law, which from my perspective, it's not necessarily to go for that because we have rules, but they're asking for special law, even, really clearly specifying conditions. You need to have work permit for that and that much. You need to have this and that in the country of, from which you're posted or from where your employer is established. So this is also part of member states. And now I'm sitting in Brussels. And what we really think is that we need to work and operate in the existing legal framework. And it was mentioned several times. So it's the treaty, the free provision of services. Then there is also posting of workers directive. We have posting of workers enforcement directive. We have ECG jurisprudence. And that all enables us to implement that law. And if, from a bit broader perspective, and it was mentioned also, this year we launched an infringement against a member state, and was mentioned, where these rules were not respected. And where certain requirements, additional requirements, were put in place in the cases where third country nationals had resident permit, they had employment permit. So these are, of course, the cases where we need to enforce the legal framework. So in short, I think we have legal framework in place. We need to jointly implement that, Member States, European Commission. And of course, the realities are, as you say, that shortages of skills are putting very sharp focus also on that dimension in Europe.
I'm so happy about this answer, and I'm so surprised that you're not applauding, because, thank you. Because last year, Professor Herwig Verschuren has given us a speech about a possible regulation of third country nationals, posting of third country nationals, and the conclusion was that it's a very dangerous process to regulate it, because on one hand, we would like to incorporate all jurisprudence into the law to make clear rules, but on the other hand, we know how the legislative process in the European Union works. And I'm going to be a little bit bitter here, but I will just repeat what Professor said last year, that by the end of the day, we may end up with a Frankenstein, with a set of rules which are not only not clear, but which would put more new barriers. And there is a real danger. And I think Zbigniew Bartuś has rightly pointed it, that regulations are only good when they are good. So if there is no political consensus about regulating it, I'm actually very happy that the Commission is very reserved to put more regulation on the issue of posting of third country nationals. I agree, we do have the legal framework for that, which is sufficient. We just need to implement it. So the last question would be really about the administrative barriers, administrative procedures. How much there is responsibility of the member states to take the burden of administrative obligations, formalities from the employers, from the companies, and put it back to the public administration, in the sense that most of those forms can be actually filled out automatically with the data that are already in possession of the member states, of the public institutions. But we still have to fill in the forms and feed the system with more or less the same data. Is there a chance for this kind of simplification without really excessive regulation needed? Is there political willingness to do this kind of simplification?
By all means, because we already have, we already have an initiative, we already have a proposal in place that we have proposed, I think it was November 2024. It is called e-declaration. Maybe some of you who are more specialists in the field have heard of this initiative. And of course, the main objective is just that. Let's bring our administrative processes all together to the 21st century and try to get, the digital support for what we are asking from companies and citizens. So I think our president, President von der Leyen, was already quoted from the beginning, and her commitment also was on simplification, enforcement, and more single market, but specifically also on simplification, was very clearly spelled out also in the meeting with the informal meeting of European Council, so not so long ago, last month, where we are, as an institution, committing ourselves to help to get European law simpler. Now, okay, there are people who also calculated this. 15 billion, can already be saved with so-called omnibus. I'm apologizing here for technical language, but omnibus proposals, which de facto means simplification proposals in different areas. And this is very big. What we see indeed, as you also have mentioned, once we put together such a law proposal, rather, then it travels to co-legislators, Council, European Parliament. Very often, some parts are changed, but that's okay, but some parts that are meant to simplify or make it maybe more complicated, or member states block simplification, or the Parliament does not agree because they feel this is not simplification, but rather deregulation. So my point here is that we need to have a joint effort by all institutions, but also from you who are supporting us. And I think it's very important that at the discussions such as today or alike, we have a chance to listen to you, and I'm very happy that many of you also talk to co-legislators, what it really means in practice if we keep the complicated system as it is. Just to conclude and give you this example, how we concretely would like to simplify your life when posting workers temporarily to another country. We came up with this proposal, which I mentioned on e-declaration, which would mean that we would set up at the EU level simple portal with a single form where the company that is going to post worker could fill in all the necessary data, and then these data are going to be, of course, kept, and if you then post the same person next time, you can also pull the same data. And certain type of information is going to be automatically pre-filled. Of course, we can never, do the full work, but what would be possible, that would be the objective, just to make these posted, declarations really much easier for the entrepreneurs. Because we see that many companies, especially SMEs, are having real, absorption of resources for these purposes, unnecessarily, disproportionately a lot. And some of them then just maybe even give up opportunity to provide service cross-border because it's a lot of paperwork and then all what follows. The big companies usually tell us it's heavy, But we are then arranging it, and it's really costly for us. We had a company who told us, on average, we pay 150 euro per file to send some time worker only for 10 hours, and this company sends highly specialized engineers. So where are we with this initiative now? The initiative is being discussed in the Council and the Parliament, and mind you, it's blocked. And it's really, I hope, not for so long time, because now even the European Council leaders start putting the finger for this simplification measure. And I truly hope that we can have an agreement, because it comes, down to very technical things, but it can really be an important support, I think, for those who are operating in the single market.
Thank you very much. I think we all are waiting for less politically spectacular, but more effective measures that you have on your table. So we strongly support your effort. Thank you for being with us. Greetings from a minister who was called for safety reasons, security reasons, so he couldn't be here with us today. And thank you for a nice conversation. And I think we all deserve a coffee break now.
Thank you.